All right, let's look at chapter 2. Unless there's something that you would like to mention that we skirted too quickly in chapter 1, that you think, okay, we need to talk about that. If there's something there in chapter 1, that is what to expect from life. So chapter 2. Chapter 2 is the meaning and purpose of wisdom. Now, this is one of those chapters I think, okay, there are some challenges here and even difficulties, I will say, in navigating how we are to understand some of these things that the Bible teaches. Some of it is difficult, so I hope that you've read through some of the material already in your book. That's why you have your books, to go home and read that. So the challenges are the fact that everything is under God's control. At the same time, there is vanity in the world, and God allows that vanity, or God allows the difficulties to continue on, and how all of that works together with the love of God. I think that's a difficult thing to think about. And it has really taxed the minds of different philosophers and theologians through the years how to manage all of this material. So let's just begin with a couple of passages that we might notice that he has right at the beginning of the book. And this is Romans chapter 8, verses 20 through 23. We'll just take it out of the ASV. That's what I'm used to. We'll actually begin at verse 18. The point simply is that the entire world has been subjected, as he says, to vanity. That's how Solomon puts it. But we have here it worded just a little bit differently, but he uses the word vanity also, the creation subjected to vanity. So let's read Romans 8. And we'll start at verse 18. Romans 8. We'll start at verse 18. And it just gives us a good sense of what we're thinking about in the entire scope that we have also in Solomon's material. For I reckon, that is, I count it to be the case, that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared to the glory that shall be revealed to usward. For the earnest expectation of the creation waits for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to vanity, not of its own will, but by reason of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself also shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the liberty of the glory of the children of God. Now, so far, as I understand Paul here, he's referring to the animate creation, that is, people specifically, not talking about necessarily the physical world, but so much as the animate creation. That would be people. So we come down to verse 22. For we groan, or we know rather, I should say, we know that the whole creation groans and travails in pain together until now. Not only so, but ourselves also, who have the first fruits of the Spirit. I take it he's referring to the apostles and those who have miraculous gifts. Even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting for our adoption, to wit, the redemption of our body. For in hope we were saved, but hope that is seen is not hope. Who hopes for that which he sees? But if we hope for that which we see not, then do we with patience wait for it. The main takeaway here is simply the fact that the whole creation subjected to vanity, inclusive of those who have miraculous gifts, inclusive of the apostles, and he says even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting for our adoption, the redemption of our body. Here we have the word groan, which refers to and always points to pain. Pain. We have pain. And that's simply how the entire creation has been subjected to pain. And that's what we're going to face. We're all growing older. We're all going to have pains. We're all going to have diseases and things that rack our bodies and to take us right to the grave. And that's what he's referring to in my estimation. But he says, the good news is what? Sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared to the glory that shall be revealed to us. That would be on the other side, usward. That is to say, no matter how deep might be the pain, it's not anything to be compared to the glory that we'll have in the land beyond the grave. So he tells us, basically, everything is subjected to vanity. And this vanity means emptiness. It's just an emptiness and seemingly purposelessness. And that's what we have regarding the world. All right, thoughts on Romans 8? Yeah, frustration. Frustration. I don't know, I'll have to look at the word on that one, but frustration, vanity, emptiness, frustration, it is a, say again? Futility would be a good synonym for that as well. Everything is futile. Everything is vain, seemingly empty. And so that's the whole creation. That includes, of course, us, the people. And I think that's what he's referring to in this passage. That's why he says we groan within ourselves, waiting for our adoption, to wit, the redemption of our body. So that will be in the future. But the point simply is what we have in this life, that's how God has ordered it. So that's step number one. But after that, let's think about a couple of other things. We have also that, and the question might come up this way, did God anticipate the evil? Did God anticipate the evil that would be in the world? And how did evil come about? Evil came about because of free will. God created man with free will, freedom of choice. But nevertheless, did God anticipate that there would be evil? Okay, created the tree, forbade them from taking from it. He created the tree, forbade them from taking of it. Did he anticipate that they would? Why do you say that, Darlene? Oh, I'm sorry, Sherry. Well, if you want to answer, you may. See, Sherry, go ahead. Okay, I was going to challenge you for just a minute, but that's all right. Go ahead, Dan. Yeah, go ahead, Nita. It is a test of our faithfulness. So here's the question I want to get to. Now, we're dealing in philosophical questions somewhat, but let's just think through this for a moment. All right, so Sherry pointed out, God anticipates and knows everything. Most of the world is lost. So why did he create knowing that most of the world would be in torment? Why would he do that? He gave us a choice. The only thing that I can conclude on this is that it is better to create than not to create. He anticipated the fact that it was better to create and have goodness and love and peace and joy in Christ and reward for those who are faithful than not to create at all. That's the only thing that I can really conceive. But I do think that you're right. I think God anticipated it. Now here's an interesting passage. It may come to my mind while you're talking. Jeremiah says that you have sinned so much that it has not even entered into the mind of God. I've forgotten which reference it is. You look it up. You got your phone. You're doing your phone a lot. It didn't even enter into my mind the sins that they would commit. Now that's kind of interesting. That's a loving God. Same God that you worship. Same God you worship. Yeah, that's a good point. They invent things, and God says they've sinned so much that it didn't even enter into my mind what they would do. I'm thinking that God did not choose somehow to know all of the depths of sin that man would actually participate in, even though he anticipated it. So what did God provide? God provided a way of escape from the vanity of this world. That's what God provided for us. And he knows that the way of escape would provide better things than the other side would. So God anticipated this, and he anticipated, here's something else, he anticipated the results of each choice that we make. He anticipated the choices that we make. It might be chapter 13, Bruce, I'm not sure. So anyway, so he's created a system in which, all right, if you choose this pathway, here's what you're going to have. If you choose this pathway, here's what's going to happen. Those are preordained. That's preordained. Here's how it's going to go if you go this direction. Here's how it's going to go if you go this direction. But whether or not you have the freedom to go this way or that way, he has left that to you. You have the freedom to make that choice. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, the consequences. Yeah, the consequences are laid out. That's correct. We have to continually make those decisions. Well, I was thinking about the passage in Jeremiah 10, but that was not it. At any rate, Is it 19 and 5? 19 and 5. Let me see. Yeah, 19 and 5. Thank you. They built the high places of Baal to burn the suns and the fires, burnt offerings to Baal, which I did not command or decree, nor did it come into my mind. They have gone so far down. That's pretty remarkable, isn't it, to think how deep man would sin. But the point simply is that God has preordained the results of the choices that we make. But the choices are ours to make. And that's the bottom line here. But all of that simply to say that the world has been created with vanity, and so what he wants us to do is to learn wisdom, and there are several places or sources from which we can find it. Number one, wisdom in nature. Number two, there's wisdom in history, and then there's also what has a section called Destiny and Freedom, and then we'll have regarding our duty. There's duty before man. So let's just think about those for a moment. We can learn wisdom from nature. This is absolutely remarkable and astounding. Now, in this section, how many have read ahead on this particular section? All right, in this section, what does he say regarding evolution? I think it's great the way he puts it. Evolution is a lie. He also uses the word, I think he uses the word myth, does he not? The evolution myth. I don't know if that's in that same page or not. The evolution myth. In other words, let's just think for a moment. If the evolutionary schemata is correct, then everything is random and purposeless. There is no purpose, and everything is random. There is no uniformity. There is no order. If you talk about the order in the chaos, the order in the universe, the evolutionists, the atheists, they laugh that there is no order whatsoever. But Solomon shows us all of that is falsity. There is order in nature, and we can learn God's wisdom by observing nature. And he uses a couple of scientists to do so. Who are the scientists that he uses here? Einstein is one of them. And Isaac Newton, yeah. Einstein, a non-believer, Isaac Newton, a believer. So I want to just mention this regarding Einstein. To me, it was fascinating. This was in the 1920s when the evidence came in that there was an expanding universe. And Einstein said, it made me cold. He says, I don't want to believe it. Now, that's not a scientific statement, is it? That doesn't sound like a scientist. He said, but the evidence was clear that the universe was expanding. Now, why would he make such a comment regarding an expanding universe? Why would he do that? Let's think for a moment. Well, what are the implications? Well, there's a beginning, and a beginning point in which everything, and he would put it this way, exploded, a big bang. But that overturned his entire worldview, which at that time was called the steady state theory. That is, everything has always existed as it is now and will always be, and there was no beginning point at all. None. There's no beginning. It just is just there. It's always been. So he said the expanding universe, he said, it makes me cold because it just overturned his worldview. And so it has been with evolutionists for so many years. Isaac Newton's statement is in here. I tell you, this is a good one right here. Did you read his statement regarding what he said? This is in 1686. Let's just take a moment and look at this. I thought he really describes it very well. And then we'll go to what Solomon had to say.
Page 30.
Okay. Page 30 in your book. So someone read that out if you want to. It starts with this most beautiful system. You have that, Nita? Or anybody could read it out. All right, so let's someone else on this one take that comment, summarize what was said. What did he say? Brother Bruce did a good read right there. What did he say? You know, I do this in class a lot. I'll say, okay, read the passage. One of the kids will read it. I say, okay, what did he just say? they'll say, well, okay, all right, let's see. Oh, no, 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 no. Look at me. What did he say? But that's kind of a difficult one. This is a challenging one. So it's like, not like, okay, you're in school, pop, 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 you do it this way. But basically, what is he saying here? That is the only, that was what I would say would be the main point, that everything he sees can only come from an intelligent mind, an intelligent being. It can only be that way. Even philosophers pre-Christ, Cicero, he did this in juvenile detention, or no, in state hospital even, didn't talk about Cicero, a Roman senator who was a pagan worshiper, came to the conclusion about the same thing, not regarding the physical universe, but about morality. He said there might be different laws and different customs in different places and different punishments for crimes, but he said in the bottom line is it all has to come from a universal mind, that there is a moral standard that God has placed into being. And he referred to a one God, even though he was a pagan. He said it has to be that way, that there is a moral standard. So if people take time to think about it, I think these are the conclusions we draw. I read a book several years ago by Michael Denton. Michael Denton is an Australian, he was, I guess, not a biochemist, microbiologist is what he was. So anyway, Michael Denton, it's called Evolution, a Theory in Crisis. He says, look here. He said in Darwin's day, they didn't even understand things regarding the cell. And he said, let me describe the cell to you. And he described the cell of one cell in the human body. He said it's like a gigantic spaceship. And he said it has messengers running in and out of the cell, different windows. It has different people. He says almost like different people's messengers, giving messages here, taking it here, something coming in, information coming in. It decodes the information, sends messages out. He said it's like a giant spaceship watching the operation. It has control boards inside of it. He said to think that this was by random or by evolution, he says it's beyond comprehension. Anyway, the point is that there's irreducible complexity in the universe, and Newton pointed it out. Now, having said all that, we're just not about, okay, this is just a science class here. So let's just think about what Solomon had to say. This is Proverbs chapter 6, verses 6 through 8. You can turn in your Bible to this one, Proverbs 6, 32 in your book. Thank you. Yeah, if you know the page where I'm going, then call it out, because I have a different pagination. Proverbs 6, and the verses are 6 through 8. What is the point that is here given? What's the point that he's making? What? Hard work. Okay, organization. You know what? If you didn't hear her in the back, I relayed a story. My grandmother called me a sluggard. Yeah, she would quote the passage to me when I was laying in bed Saturday mornings. Go to the ant, thou sluggard. Consider her ways, I said, yeah. It's like, ah. Yeah, she would do that because so anyway. Get up. She was up at 4 in the morning. She would get up at 4 every morning and study her Bible. And then she'd be out in the garden at 5 o'clock in the morning. To me, as a teenager, like junior high and high school, I'm going to stay in bed till 10, 11. Hot. She said, why do you wait for it to get so hot? Because it's now 110 degrees. I said, I don't care, Grandma. I don't care. But be that as it may. But the point that Solomon is making is this, that we have organization, and they have a system that they follow, and it's a coded system. They all have this in their DNA. So how is that the case? And he's pointing out the same thing that did Isaac Newton, same thing as did Einstein, same thing as Michael Denton in Evolution, a Theory in Crisis, except in this case, He's referring simply, just look at nature. And when you look at nature, there is order in the complexity. There's order in it. We haven't even heard from the scientist in the room, Jim Blundell. He's a scientist. I would expect him to log in on these things. Not going to log in. He would let us wander off the track. If I go off the track, you just wheel me back in. Okay. So Solomon says, you just look at nature and you can see the order, the complexity that we have. And just in the ant, for example. That doesn't answer necessarily every question that people may raise, but nevertheless, that's the idea. There's wisdom in nature. So that's Proverbs chapter 6. Now let's look at the next one, which is a statement from Augur, who is chapter 30, verses 24 through 28. Proverbs 30. Told the words of Augur, the son of Jacob, the oracle that he gave. So this is chapter 30. We're going to verse 24 through 28. All right, what would you say the point is on that one? You know, the key, I think, thought there, at least in my mind, is the least in nature, the very least in nature. The coney is a badger. The least in nature has all of this order, complexity, are able to do things, and even the lizard. They live in king's palaces. And that's just like, well. So he says even the very smallest things of nature, they should teach us some things regarding. Now, he makes a point here in the book. He says, you know, isn't that the opposite of the way humans behave? He goes on, he says, it's a paradox. I don't know if your paragraph reads this way. The organisms with the greatest intellectual potential are born less wise. A man with the greatest brain is born least endowed with the knowledge and skill. The animals most capable of learning, paradoxically, possess the least amount of genetic wisdom to govern their behavior. In fact, rodents employ more skill in building nests, for example, than do apes, whose hands and brain give them a greater potential. So our lack of instinct is a benefit, however, he says, because it gives us the ability to learn. And we're not just, in other words, we're not just operating on natural instinct. We have instincts, but we're not just operating on natural instinct, because that gives us the ability to learn. Just for example, deal with horses, and so, you know, horses have this instinct, and the challenge is that we're asking the horse to come into the human world, and that is, she is a prey animal. We're predators, and so that's just setting up a relationship that's pretty challenging. And you'll find out sometimes if something happens, you'll find out, okay, they just busted the halter and tore down half the barn, what they're doing. Yes, ma'am. So there's wisdom in nature, and that's Solomon's point in all of this. So here's something else you can do with the lynch: save it, and you can start fire with it easily. So if you go out in the woods and you're out there lost and you keep it in a skull can, not that you've emptied the skull can yourself, but you know, empty a skull can, have a hole in it, put it in there, and then you can and you burn it first of all, and you blacken it, and then you use it for fire starter. It's easy fire starter. It's a great fire starter. But lint, just lint. And birds use it. They just have this instinct to build, and that's all animals have, that instinct, right? Survival, it's just a survival thing, so we have less of it, but that gives us an opportunity to expand our knowledge and learn. Yes, ma'am. Well, that's funny. All right, let's look at number 2 point, and that is wisdom in history. Unless there's something else. There's wisdom in nature, but now there's wisdom in history. What's the main point here? Having read ahead, what is the main point he makes regarding wisdom in history? I think that, in my mind, hits the nail on the head. Nothing new under the sun. In spite of the fact that we may think that there is, Solomon says, no, there's nothing new. What is now going to take place, or what now occurs, has been before. And our goal, therefore, should be to learn from history. What's the main history from which we should learn? How to live with it. But how do we learn to do that? The Bible. Yeah, the Bible. The Bible is a handbook on how sin affects an individual and destroys individuals, how sin affects relationships, what to do to come out of that, how to maintain a good relationship, how to be a good husband, how to be a good father, how to be a good mother, how to be a good wife, how to be a good citizen, how to be a Christian. The handbook is here. And why people sin. Why do people sin? Why and how people excuse themselves of sin. Here's something that never ceases to amaze me. We in our culture want to blame, for example, poverty on so many things such as, what do we, just take that just broad-sided, what do we blame poverty on? Okay, lack of education, race, lack of education, but really, Solomon shows us that is not the root of poverty. That's not the root of problems in life. The root is sin. Sin's the root. Sin's the root. There's so many people in poverty now, and we think, okay, to remedy the poverty situation, we need to do what? Throw money at it. Throw money at it. But what would Solomon say? Teach them. Teach them some things. So our founding fathers made it unconstitutional to have a welfare system. They would say, yeah, we need to take care of the poor, but that's your individual responsibility, and you need to oversee it. At the same time, you need to manage it in the sense that you need to teach those people responsibility and what is it to be responsible. That's the key to it. It's not about racism. It's not about lack of education, but it is about morality. It's about human nature, learning to live in God's world and recognize that God's in control of these things. And so that's the idea. So all of that bound up in this particular point. So let's look at this passage, chapter 1 of Ecclesiastes, 9 through 11. Ecclesiastes 1, 9 through 11. Page 34 in the book. Yeah, thank you. All right, let's go to chapter 3 at this particular point. Look at chapter 3, verses 14 and 15. I perceive that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken from it. God has done it so that people fear before him. That which is already has been. That which is to be already has been. God seeks what has been driven away. He has this statement in here in Ecclesiastes 3, quoting it, and he uses another translation, so I'm going to look at this one. This is from the RSV. Anybody use the RSV in here? It's really not one that people use frequently today, but RSV. I know that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken from it. God has made it so, in order that men should fear before him. Whatever has been before, and what is to be now, because God makes search for the things that are past. That is to say, it all just as repetitive continues on. So chapter 6 and verse 10, whatsoever comes into being, the name therefore was given long ago. It is foreknown what man is, neither can he contend with him that is mightier than he. Ecclesiastes 6 and verse 10. All right, what's the point? What's the point here in all of this? Well, the point is what? Yeah, learn from, yeah. Now, we do have a major problem here. And the major problem is that many people say, and we seem to accept, well, everybody has to make their own mistakes. That's right. That's right. It's exactly right. They don't have to make their own mistakes. That's correct. We kind of accept that everybody has to make their own mistakes. But that is a misunderstanding. Why don't we learn from the mistakes of the Bible or people who are highlighted in the Bible? Learn the mistakes that they made. Here's what's going to happen if you do this. Just like the kid touching a hot stove. Put his hand in the fire. I had a teacher at Alabama Christian College, Leonard Johnson, one of the beloved teachers. He said, you know what? When he had kids and they crawled toward the fire and he reached a hot coal, he said, I didn't stop them. I thought, he said, one touch, they'll never do it again. They'll never do it. He said, they never. I thought, well, that's kind of tough, isn't it? And he would say, that's life. It's like, well, but just touch it. Oh, and that, of course, their hand will heal, but boy, they learn the lesson and they will never do it again. Yes, ma'am. Well, not everything will be handled that way. If you see your toddler walking out toward the street, you're not going to say, hey, you're going to learn something here. But in a lot of ways, you know, we're all going to learn something there, you know. But in a lot of ways, people need to learn from the mistakes of others, and we can and we should. And that's really key of life. Yes, sir. Jimmy Allen would say this in Bible class. He said, you know what, when I go camping, he said, I try to get near the fire as I can. He said, that tells me, don't you dare go to hell, because he said, I can't handle it. Don't you dare live a life there. You're going to be, because I can't do this. He said, don't you dare. So, yeah, anyway. All right. So we learn from history as well as nature. So we'll talk more about history, then destiny and freedom and duty, Lord willing, next week.